Welcome to another episode of our podcast, What Pharma Needs Next. My name is Florian Schnappauf, and I lead commercial strategy for Viva in Europe. And I'm honored and privileged to have two great guests here with me today. Erica Taylor, Chief Marketing Officer of Genentech, and Oz Demir, Head of Digital Marketing at Genentech. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great having both of you in the podcast. Now, we have a really interesting topic to explore today. Our topic is from content to experience. Content being a very important driver of experience for customers out there in the life science industry. Looking forward to dive a little bit deeper into that topic with you. But before we get there, why don't you start by telling us a little bit how your roles even came into existence as part of that journey at Genentech? Maybe Erica, do you want to start?
I've been in this role as the Chief Marketing Officer for just over 2 years, which kind of blows my mind. So sometimes when I think about how long and how short that is. These roles were announced in early of 2022 by our then CEO. And the mandate for the role was that we needed to really begin to think of marketing far more holistically and as its own discipline, and that the importance of being much stronger as a marketing organization to our commercial business and to our patients was really important. As you all well know, a lot of our industry sort of grows up around product. There's sort of this very clear product and brand orientation. And the reason to unify under a Chief Marketing Officer is to say, yes, that's important. And there are some universal truths of good marketing, content, and experiences that we need to create that we want to sort of centralize. As a part of that, there was the beginning of the digital marketing office. So I had the pleasure of inviting Oz to come over from his previous organization. And that team has just grown and really thrived under his leadership. Do you want to say more?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. And I think my role, the digital marketing office role, was created because we wanted to advance how we do digital marketing, right? We actually thought, to be great at commercial, you cannot be average in digital. So how do we really focus on that? That's not the only focus, but how do we make sure our marketers, which we have many, can get to that advanced level and really drive the organization commercially? That's why my role was created, and it was very exciting. It was a team of one first. Now it's not. It was. Now it's not. But yeah, the main purpose is how do we drive this change and transformation, which I know we're going to talk about.
Yeah. I think one of the unique things that Oz brings to the role is what I'll call, you actually are more than just bilingual, but he speaks both marketing, really understanding the sort of day in the life of marketing, but also deeply understands digital and technology, and having someone be able to cross both disciplines really well has been very effective in moving our marketing organization.
Very interesting. And I think we'll be speaking about a little bit about silos and how to bring those together. So you seem perfectly positioned to actually do that as persons. Now, the topic is from content to experience. Help us understand, what is it that we mean by that? What is the transformation that you are also on at Genentech? Take us a little bit to the beginnings of how that ever came about.
You need content to have a good experience, right? And to me, the analogy is a house versus a home. You need materials, you need, wood, you need metal, you need glass to build a house, but that does not mean it's a home. A home is how you feel. A home is the people that make it up. And when we think about the journey from content to experience, it's understanding that one is necessary but not sufficient. And how do we really build out the experience? Well, to do that, you have to know people really well, right? You have to know who it is you're talking to very well. And it has to feel personalized. Maybe it doesn't have to be fully N of one, but it should feel that way. And I think that's how you go from a house to a home, such as it were.
And I love this title of From Content to Experience because it shows that it's fully connected. We come across situations where some people develop content, some people measure, some people are responsible for experience, and these are not connected. So when you don't create the right content, or you measure the outputs and they don't match, it's because of these silos and because things are not aligned to each other. But if everything is aligned, from actually strategy to content to experience to measurement and optimization, I think now you're getting to a place where the whole organization is connected around what the customer needs. And that actually drives the experience that you're trying to drive.
What did you find when you both joined? What was the starting point, more to say?
I would like to think we're not unique in this. I think as an industry, and I'll give a huge credit not only to our current marketing organization, but even our leadership, and not only kind of ushering in some of the change before this role was established, but then really supporting it through. I think what we found was, one, when you make really great medicines, the need to be exceptional in marketing just isn't there. The medicines are going to do what they need to do for patients. I think we realized that, one, we're no longer the only organization making great medicines. Maybe we never were, but certainly not now. In these increasingly competitive environments, how you get your information out and through so much more depends on your ability to deliver really good content, really personalized content at the right moment and in the right way. I'll also maybe add, I think there's something from even our experiences in the pandemic where there's, I think not only an industry, but our customers and our patients really are beginning to demand the kind of experiences that they get outside of healthcare in their healthcare. And I personally take that as a mission because I think it's perfectly fine and maybe easier to have a wonderful experience when you're buying trousers or a jacket. Your healthcare demands probably an even better experience, right? I take that as almost a personal mission that we should require that. And I like that our customers demand that of us. It forces us to be better as an organization. I think now everything seems to be moving faster. Not only how we receive information, how our customers are doing it, the pace of innovation is going faster. New medicines are coming in. And I think that speed is requiring us to say, yeah, this was a good idea. Oh no, but really we need to go and we need to run and we need to do it now.
From the time I joined and the time I had a senior management presentation, I remember this really well. It's up to the CEO level, right? The observation that I had was this. The organization actually knows they want to go there. They did not know how to go there, right? I think that's the reason why Erica was hired into that role. I was hired into this role where the senior management was really open to how do we do this? How do we transform? And I think the biggest thing was the whole organization was actually almost there in terms of the mindset. We had never done this before, right? We were a very highly scientific, and we still are, company that did everything like it was producing medicine, right? And in commercial, you cannot really take years to just build a plan and then go to that plan. So I think our observation and our recommendation was, how do you become commercially strong, which is a little different from scientifically strong? It has a lot of foundational points of, let's say, commonality, but how do you keep experimenting? How do you put out something that is not 100% right, but maybe 90% right? And then you keep measuring it and iterating it. I think that was the message that we gave to the organization, and it's been perceived really well. And we got top-down support and support from a lot of hundreds of people that wanted us, to tell them, how do we get there?
Clearly, there was a need and a mindset already kind of pointing into the right direction. How did you actually get started then? I mean, it's one thing to have the right idea, right? But then it's a totally different thing to actually execute on that idea. And I think part of what you're saying and telling us is that you're coming into Genentech was part of that journey. But what was the next step?
One is full commitment from all of senior leadership that this is the right thing to do. Right? Not just one person, not just the CEO, but the whole senior leadership team aligning on what are we trying to do, the timelines, what it takes to get there, including resources, including mindset shift. And then, we have done the previous groundwork I talked to about 200 marketers in about 3-4 months to really listen to them and understand. I think it's that middle between top down and bottoms up that gets you there, but also, again, the commitment from senior leadership and keeping them accountable. When you see that certain parts of the organization are not moving, not having fear to talk to very senior leaders and asking them to move their organizations all together.
How did that work? I mean, was it unanimous? Everybody screamed, this is exactly what we always needed? Or am I mistaken there?
Knowing and doing are different things, right? I think, to Oz's point, the leadership commitment was incredibly important and the input that we needed from the team. I think the other thing, and this is, maybe going back a step, there was enough discomfort with the current status quo. We kind of knew we had to do something. So that's one main ingredient.
What did you know?
Well, frankly, the things that we had been doing weren't working as well.
Mm-hmm. So you had a commercial situation that you felt was not sustainable any longer in that.
And not universally, we had some teams that are like, oh, this isn't working. Why don't we try this? Why don't we try something else? So you're trying to organize a little bit of that feeling of maybe things do need to change. You need a clear vision, where are we headed? And really kind of laying out, what do we mean by excellence in marketing? What is it going to take? and saying things like, really kind of painting the picture. So for example, traditionally when we get our information back from our analytics teams, there's usually a slide deck, there's a presentation, there's an hour-long discussion about it. And I said, there's going to come a point where that's not how you get your information anymore. Now, you log into a portal, you have a dashboard, all of your information is there, and you're taking action that day, right? And painting that sort of like, this is where we're going. Here are all the things we need to do to get there. This is where Oz and his team comes into play, and really kind of laying out our roadmap for that. And then even when you have all of that and people say, yep, that's good, then you need to make sure the incentive structures are different. Because if you're incentivized to do everything the original way, there is no real motivator to make that change outside of a couple of folks that are really personally committed.
You spoke about people there, right? And you spoke about incentive structures. What are actually the elements, the tangible elements, the drivers that you need to work on in such a transformation to a better customer experience? What are the levers you actually worked on?
We aren't expecting people to be robots, right? And so I want to be very clear about that. We're empathetic to the fact that sometimes these kinds of changes and transformations are hard. But there does come a point where it says this behavior and this way of working will simply no longer be tolerated. And those are hard lines to take. They're hard for leaders to take. We've all lived in certain roles where we've had to do that. Those are not fun conversations. Those, you're the topic of conversation at the dinner table that evening. But it sends a great signal when we talk about the levers that you can use. It sends a great signal to the rest of the 90% of the folks that are on board, that our leaders are walking their talk to say, no, that we are going in this direction, because the people who don't want to go with us have either had their behaviors adjusted or they're no longer here. And it's, again, I hesitate to sort of get too deep into these conversations because they can sound very, harsh almost. But I do think there's something to be said about being very clear about setting those expectations and having honest conversations around that.
A lot of companies, I think you're definitely not alone out there, right? In kind of your endeavor to create better customer experience, but you're maybe more far advanced on the way already. Now, what did it take? How long does such a change actually take? And how do you persistently actually drive it forward?
Yeah, I think change is never ending, right? Again, it's never going to be perfect, which is the exciting thing, right? We always get better. I will say though, like at least a year is required to change minds and hearts and behaviors, right? Because people hear about something, they try to absorb it. You need to show them 10 times and tell them 10 times before they really say, yeah, I actually understand this so well and I practice in my daily life that now I'm there. It's been 2 years now on our journey, a little bit more. I finally feel like we're almost there. But again, when we talk about transformation, this is the message from me to all marketers. It's actually not a transformation that ends in 6 months and then you're good for the next 10 years. You keep transforming because technology changes all the time. Consumer behavior changes all the time. So I think, let's get used to just keep changing all the time.
I think maybe the other thing that we think about when we're talking about some of this transformational change and where we've been on this journey, I feel like we're very much at a point now where we're adding new things and new capabilities into a finite set of resources, both human and non-human, right? So we've got to start to think about, okay, what do we stop doing? What are we no longer doing anymore? And so if you build a new bridge, usually you do so next to the old bridge. And, you build it, you test it. But there's never a moment when you drive halfway across the new bridge and then you jump over to the old bridge and drive the rest of the way across. That doesn't happen. What happens? You close the old bridge. In some cases, you blow it up, literally. And everyone is now driving on the new bridge, right? And the worry about two bridges is that you're adding new things, but you aren't taking away old things. And we're basically at a point now as an organization where, I even said this to my boss yesterday, like, I'm worried about breaking marketing, right? and because it's unsustainable and you don't know which way to go. So we really are rapidly reaching this point where we, as we've been saying, we blow up the old bridge and now everyone is working in this new way so that it's sustainable. And maybe if I were to really, really blow up this analogy even further, whenever you do have a new bridge, it's a new traffic pattern. You've got new stoplights, new, construction cones. You don't drive as fast, right? Initially, you get used to it, right? But even beginning to signal to our organization that is what we need to do. We need to do it this year, 25 that is. And it's going to be a little bit of a construction zone as we adjust to these new traffic patterns, but it's the only way that we can actually fully move into that new future.
One of the things we haven't touched upon is data, actually, because customer experience is an emotion, almost like an emotional topic, right? But data can potentially point the way of how you create that experience and what you need to actually shape it. What role does data play in your transformation towards better customer experience?
You're so passionate about this. I want to
I can talk about data for a long time. So I think there are two main components, right? The first one is, can you use data to craft messages and creative to really move people? That's one. Then, of course, you have to create whatever you need to create, and you can be very creative there. The second piece of, once it's out in the world and it's touching patients or physicians or caregivers, really look at that data to see what is making a difference, what actually gets people more engaged, more excited. And then you go back to, am I using the right channel? Am I using the right content? Sometimes, less frequently, is this the right person? And even less frequently, is this the right strategy, right? Sometimes your data can tell you, I'm actually not executing the right strategy. It often tells you this is not the right channel or the right channel. It often tells you this is great content, or, this content actually is not resonating. But I would like to take those like loops that are really frequent here, but also a little less frequent here. It doesn't mean you could kill creativity, right? Like we talk about creativity all the time. But data drives everything. It drives how you put things to market. It drives how you optimize.
From an input perspective, data, what type of data you're looking at to improve potentially that customer experience, to understand the customer better? I guess the second question is, how important is that real-time feedback loop, right? I mean, Viva, we talk a lot about the new content supply chain and real-time metrics from the point of usage of content back to the creation. How important is that for you?
Let me start with the first one. We look at a lot of different things, but every engagement or no engagement is a data point, right? If somebody is not engaging, that's not a void. That's a data point that tells me people are not interested in this. I'll give you examples. Emails, of course, we look at open rates. Of course, we look at click-through rates. Websites, we look at like scroll rates. We look at bounce rate. We have a lot of social media presence. We look at, if it's a video, have people seen the video? We actually go as deep as, hey, our message is in minute 1, second 20. Are people watching until that point? If they're not, where are they dropping off? Is it second 36? Why is it? Let's look at the content. Maybe it dips a little bit in the excitement of it or the emotional component. We try to take a very scientific approach to that and really put that feedback loop in. Your second question, which is critical, and this is why measurement is one of our biggest pillars, we are trying to get it as close to real time as possible. We cannot have marketers look at data in May about January and say, oh, I need to change this.
Yeah.
Your customers moved on. And your point about the content supply chain, which is a word we started using as well, is critical, because you cannot have a MarTech which is really fragmented and there are different tools that are not talking to each other. And you're planning your content here, you're generating it here, you take it to MLR here, and they're all disconnected. Now you don't have a clear view into your performance, a clear view into how you deliver things. So the minute you have them integrated, hopefully in the same platform, which is the reason why I'm really excited about this MLR bots that could actually provide that holistic viewpoint. Yeah, that's critical.
If we'd had the privilege to speak again in about 12 to 24 months, what would be the next big thing in this space?
More engaging content, because we know it's engaging, at scale, the size of our organization, and at speed, which has a little bit of a touch on the MLR. We will be flywheeling that or cycling that through much more quickly across the full organization. I'd love to be able to say that to you in a year.
I'm looking forward to that, Oz.
Similar comment. I'm going to put a little bit more quantity over it. I want us to create 20x the content that we're creating. It doesn't mean we're going to people and showing them 20x the content, but we're really personalizing it. It has to be cheaper. It has to be faster, right? Like you cannot take 5 months to create content. Can you take 2 days to create content? The second piece is consistent and constant measurement of every single thing we do, which feeds back into that content generation.
One question we ask all of our podcast guests is the start-stop question, as we call it, right? If you'd had a superpower to stop doing one thing in the industry in our beloved life science industry and start doing another thing, what would that thing be?
This one might be controversial.
I love that.
I think we should stop viewing the rep as the quarterback of the customer. I think we should start having a much more many channels approach to the customer, and frankly, a more diverse view of the customer. What do I mean by that? I think we typically think of the customer as a prescriber, and they are a very important customer, but they are increasingly, certainly in the US, they are increasingly part of a complex web of decision makers that all have different things that they care about, up to and including the patient and the caregiver. And I think we sometimes take a very narrow view of the customer and we think, oh, it's just the prescriber. We build everything around that. I know that's easy to do in some spaces because of the way it's set up. But I think we should stop doing that, and we should start to view as our collective responsibility to move our customers along our continuums that we need to do so. And we don't have, say, one quarterback that owns that customer.
Not sure even if that's controversial because it's a trend, right, that we see in many, many different indicational areas. Oz, what do you think?
Stop planning to perfection, where you take a year to plan something because you want to make it perfect. And by that 1 year, actually things change so much. You're not perfect anymore. So you take another year, right? So I think my start is connected. Start experimenting a little bit, right? Even if it's not 100%, even if it's 75%, experiment. Of course, I'm not talking about compliance things, right? I'm talking about different messages, different channels. You can actually experiment and measure. Again, as long as you measure, I keep talking about that, you'll be fine. And you're going to get to that maybe 95%. It's never going to be 100, but you are going to get there by seeing. I think we spend too much time in theory and a little bit on practice. I would love to see us spend more time in practice and just a little bit on theory.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you to both of you. Thank you for your time and joining this podcast. I'm really looking forward to that next episode we're going to do because we've got a ton of topics to discuss. Thanks for being here, and until soon.